Greetings from Mel.
Greetings from Sim.
It is our pleasure to have you with us for another B.O.O.K podcast moment. B.O.K, our book, also known as Building Our Own Knowledge, is a co-created cloud for interrogating, finding, making, and sharing experiences and knowledge on our own terms.
This podcast is brought to you by the labor of love of B.O.O.K working group members Sim Mendes and Melisandre Varan. The music carrying us through is by B.O.O.K working group member and commissioned artist Samir Saunders. Samir brought their sonic waves to its final form by reading All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks. We thank our loving ancestors for using our beings as vessels.
We hope you whine or wave with this DIY podcast as much as we do.
Go.
Hello, everyone. It's Sim here from B.O.O.K, Building Our Own Knowledge. I am the book artist liaison and occasional facilitator, and I'm here with Mel, artist curator of B.O.O.K, and Layo today. So yeah, I'm just going to get into it with the intros. I'm going to go last this time because usually I do myself first. So I'm going to pass to Layo first. I'm going to ask you who you are, what you do, your big three, and then what you care about, if you can remember all of the things, but I can remind you.
Yes. Okay. I'm Titilayo. My pronouns are they, she, non-binary. I'm an artist. I do mainly dance, I would say, but mostly movement practice. I think dance has a violence that comes with the name, but that's a political thing. I work now in Switzerland, in Zurich, as part of the Schauspielhaus Theatre, where I perform with Trajo Harrell and Wutsang, both queer artists, which is really nice. And yeah, I've started DJing recently, and I feel very scattered right now. I'm going with the flow. I'm just trying to have a creative practice I'm proud to say I have. And I don't know, I think that's the best way to put it. And I'm trying now, as I feel like I'm getting older, to be more of a community person, fairy. I don't know, somehow. Like I see a lot of these non-binary kids and I just kind of want to help them feel like, I want to give them the elder people I never had growing up. Like, not like, oh, you're younger, but just to be older, happy, thriving, and to be like, hey, you could do this. Or, hey, if you want somewhere to disappear to for a day, I'm here. So that's kind of where I'm at now in Zurich.
Oh, that's so sweet. And what is your big three, if you know them, your sun, moon, rising?
Oh, Leo, Gemini.
You're double Gemini.
Oh, Gemini, baby.
It makes all the sense. All the sense.
Yeah.
And what do you care about right now?
I care about psychological evolution. I think humans need to get their shit together. And I think it starts with the mind. And I mean, attached to healing, of course, but I think it baffles me sometimes how many arguments keep happening over and over again, and how many people's rights are being like questioned over and over again. And it just feels like it's a psychological issue, which is just annoying at this point in time, that I hope we can, like, you know, understand the nuances of being human more, and, you know, stop scapegoating things to people who don't deserve it. And I don't know, just give white supremacy a bit of a panel, in a sense of acknowledging that's a big issue and it's a major part of all our issues. I don't think it's the only issue, but I think it penetrates more than just a white mind. And I think it's problematic that we don't just acknowledge it a bit more. yeah.
Mhm. Wonderful. I don't know if I've ever heard it phrased as psychological evolution before. So love that. Okay, so I'm gonna pass on the baton. Hi Mel.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, really interesting to hear you introduce yourself with your words. So I'm Mel, Melisandre Varin, artist curator of B.O.K, Building Our Own Knowledge. I am a mutant that is co-parent to Eol, almost 4 years old. Also Sim's partner. I am someone that care about being moved at the moment, by any means necessary, I suppose. Although some of the ways are more painful than others. My big three, I am a Pisces Sun and double Libra. That's me. I'm also like, I think I should say that because I think it's just going to bother me. I was looking for a book just before, I didn't find my book. So it's gonna be like lingering at the back of my mind. But otherwise, I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Sim.
There's a siren going by. Okay. Hi, I'm Sim. Pronouns they, them, it. I am an Aries sun, Pisces moon, Sagittarius rising.
Oh.
Yes, double fire. Surrounded by 2 double airs, which is interesting. And yeah, I care about right now. I feel like I care about just putting like one foot in front of the other right now. I think I care about slowness, but like very micro level slow of like you managed to make a cup of tea and like your head is still screwed on type slow. Yeah, I care about the care that we give to ourselves in these micro moments. I care about the thoughts that get slowed down and like that come to the forefront of our consciousness, which happens when we allow ourselves to be slow and like nourish these like micro moments. So yeah, that's what I care about today. Yeah, cool. So yes, and I also like picked an extract last minute and I like read this thing a while ago and now looking back at it, you know, when you feel like you have to read it from the beginning to understand it and then reading it as an extract, it's like, do I actually understand that? But I'm gonna read it anyway. But I'll let you go first, Lio, to read your extracto.
I have my book. It's Black Dancing Body, The Black Dancing Body, Geography from Coon to Cool by Brenda Dixon Godchild. She has plenty other books as well. So the part I found is not, it kind of, for me, speaks to what it means to be a Black dancer in ways that I struggle to express. And now I find the quote. This always happens. Okay, so it struck me as ironic and frustrating that dancers could live in fantasy worlds, be willies, or princesses, goddesses, or witches, but Black skin dancers in a dance based on a Greek-inspired theme would be detrimental to some principle of unity. And then, aware of the barriers and boundaries that the Black dancing body represented to the white dance hierarchy. I can't say hierarchy. Oh, we got it. That's it. Shit, I should have kept the page number.
Wow. Beautiful.
Mhm.
Can you read it again? Would you mind reading
Yes,
it again?
of course. It was a bit scattered.
No, it was great, but it's just like lots of new elements in my day.
So it struck me as ironic and frustrating that dancers could live in fantasy worlds, be it Willis or princesses, goddesses, or witches, but Black skin dancers in a dance based on a Greek-inspired theme would be detrimental to some principle of unity. So there I was aware of the barriers and boundaries that the Black dancing body represented to the white dance hierarchy. Page 4.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why did you choose this passage in particular?
Well, I also saw the book quote thing like 5 minutes before this. So I just went to my favorite book, and then I just went through the things I had underlined, and this is what I found. It's the best way to put it. I mean, everything I underlined are things I liked, but I guess what I liked about this passage and why it really, for me, speaks is fantasy. And I think being queer, we love fantasy worlds usually. And I feel like being queer, like the glitter, the dressing up, that's one aspect of fantasy, but there's another aspect of fantasy we don't have access to. And I think through dance, there are always new depths to it that I find. But I feel like, once again, the world of dance, I mean, right now, being Black and dancer, it's not bad, but it's very commercial. And you can get a lot of success out of being a commercial dancer and a commercial Black dancer, even in the ballroom scene. And so it's like, where do we have the deep conversations about dance as a practice? And I studied dance at uni, so I think it was definitely an entry point to it. But like, I love this because it's talking about the fairies and stuff and how it's great, but then there's a lack of unity also. And I like that sometimes I'm reminded that there's a lack of unity when it comes to dance as a practice in the institution. Because when you have like dance, I guess, as a social dance, as a place of connection, as a ritual, I don't know, once again, and then it takes me back, like, actually, if I went to Nigeria 20 years ago and I went through and I ended up at a traditional dance seance thing, maybe I would see a bunch of fairies if I look at it from this perspective. But I think we get very removed from these things and there's not very many conversations about it. Perhaps, I don't know, but yeah, this is why I chose it. I think there's always so much you can talk about, I guess.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I needed you to like, I think, guide me through because I'm not a dancer, and I think I've had very limited I don't know, limited introduction and being in a dance environment, and somehow this is like more of a dance. It seems to be more of a dance environment to me because you are a dancer, and Sim also works more like as a movement artist. So I'm very like, oh, you know, like I enter a space, I remove my shoes, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna observe more than anything else, because this seems to be new vocabulary and ways of being. Or ways of existing to me. So having your inputs into the passage like really like highlighted things for me. So thank you so much.
Okay, yay.
Yeah, it's always like so interesting, and I think the more and more that I interact or sort of cross paths with people like sort of deep into the dance community, quote unquote, the more I see levels of violence, sort of levels of restriction, and also yeah, I don't know, such a rigidity around something. So then the more dancers I come across are now saying like, yeah, I work more with movement, and like this dance comes with so much violence and history that like almost strips Black people of like so much, and it almost requires you to just come basically as like something hollow to get filled with all of these things. So yeah, definitely like a really interesting read. I might have to like that.
Yeah, there's also this other book, Dancing in the Blood, which talks about how white people talked about dance, and they would say shit like, because never mind racism, they were saying stuff like, oh, the Italians, so there'll be a dancer and they'll be talking about the dancer like, oh, you can see her Italian class with her Spanish exoticism. And that's how they're explaining people there. And I'm like, ew. And they're talking about breeding and mixing blood literally to create a dancer to perform in a certain way. And I'm like, ew. And then they would go to different parts of the world. So they'll go to India, they'll learn the Indian practice, and then they'll come here and they'll perform it. And then they'll say that's how they're expressing their exotic or the erotic parts of themselves. And even the Oriental dance name kind of came from dance as well. Like, so it's just messy with the history of it. And it's really like not talked about enough, but it's like, yeah, these violences that come with being in the dance world, I think just us restricted to talking about ballet. And I think it's a bit ridiculous because it goes beyond just dance, because every body is a body. And I think this is one thing with dance that you can't over, like with music, every other thing you can kind of try to bypass it, but with dance there's just no way to bypass history somehow. And I find this very fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know, there's something about like, I don't know, white people or people in the Western world using exoticism to express a shadow or to express a level of sensuality that they find maybe hard or like shameful to express if they were to express it themselves. I don't know, like it's so, yeah, bizarre. But I think like, yeah, there's this level of ignoring these things in the dance community because it just seems like everybody's just fighting to just get where they need to go. So it's like, oh, we don't have time for it. Like, yeah, the history can be shit, but like I need to be over there. So like I'm just gonna do it anyway. And I'm do you want to go next with your extract?
Yeah, I thought because there was this detour to history in general or dance history, so I thought that it will be a good time for me to share my passage from Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments by Saidia Hartman. That one. So as you did, Layo, I also like just picked a passage. It's like a book that was very close to my heart 2 years and a half ago. Back then, it was like my Bible, and I highlighted lots of passages in it, and I ended up to this passage, page 8. So it says, I don't know the context anymore of like that page 8, right? But just the passage. A whole world is jammed into one short block crowded with Black folks shut out from almost every opportunity the city affords, but still intoxicated with freedom. The air is alive with the possibilities of assembling, gathering, congregating. At any moment, the promise of insurrection, the miracle of upheaval, ... small groups, people by themselves, and strangers threaten to become an ensemble to incite treason en masse. Treason en masse.
Treason en masse, yeah.
Treason en masse. Oh, should I read it again?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, can you read it again?
I got so excited. A whole world is jammed into one short block crowded with Black folks shut out from almost every opportunity the city affords, but still intoxicated with freedom. The air is alive with the possibilities of assembling, gathering, congregating. At any moment, the promise of insurrection, the miracle of upheaval, small groups, people by themselves, and strangers threaten to become an ensemble to incite treason en masse. Well, I remember now. It's yeah, I think it is so much linked to what you were saying from my corner. I think this is the codes that I can understand your previous conversation with. So like from conceptual thinking, I suppose so. I don't know. So for me, what you were speaking about before, there was so much about treason en masse, the threat of becoming an ensemble as well, the promise of insurrection, and being intoxicated with freedom and like still going on even if like, you know. So
yeah. So good. I would definitely need to get that book because that's such a good part already.
Yeah, I didn't get through that whole book, but I do remember reading that.
About passage?
Yeah, in the past. Yeah, I mean, like, what is there to say? Do you know what I mean? I feel like intoxicated with freedom, I think is gonna like stick with me. This level of like a whole world that's reduced to just one geographical space. That feels confined and crowded, but there's a level of congregating and freedom within that very distilled space, you know. And they selves instead of themselves. I don't know why, but yeah, like maybe themselves feels more dismissive than they selves. I'm not sure. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. For me, like no, but like just highlighting again the threat of ensemble, like that speaks so much to me. Like as if it was a biomolecular process of like, oh, people gather, like not people, but even like, you know, organism gathering next to one another in sorts of like in the quest of pleasure. And then actually like for me, my molecules will be like, oh my gosh, this is too frightening to like be part of sometimes. And I need to like, detach because I know that there is a threat that is birthed by being a unit. You were talking about unity as well. Like, yeah, you were. There was something about unity in your passage as well.
Lisa, let me double check.
You remember?
No, I don't. Now I'm just looking at Layo's Pikachu.
No,
But I think Ale, Mal's little one, has and also has a Pikachu.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a lion.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah.
Yellow one, yeah.
Damn it. I was like, okay, they won't see the onesie anyways. The politics of silence. Okay. We got down to the totally in and out. Woo! See, I'm getting the good part now. Let me go page 4. Yeah, no, they definitely mentioned unity. Yes. Yeah, that was it. So it was like but black skin dancers in a dance based on the Greek inspired theme would be detrimental to some principle of unity. So it's kind of like if we also as dancers just surrendered to being a fairy on stage as a fantasy, it's like what's the word? It's detrimental to some principle of unity. And it's kind of like somehow coming from the back of what you're saying, if I understand correctly, which is it's almost like and this is the violence we talk about with dance often, which is the second you enter the space to be part of it, you're contributing to the thing, to their fantasy perhaps, rather than the fantasy we want. And then like the ensemble is a threat, because I also feel this way as well. Like the idea of being in a dance company sounds like terrible because it feels like it's, I don't know, like straightness. I don't know, like it's like accepting a path which I don't want to be fixated on or a part of. And yeah, but yeah.
And then I think you'll contribute with your passage, but yeah, it's this fairiness, illusion, fairy world that you're talking about. I think there is a lot of illusion in that, and sometimes we think that one path is gonna be good for us or for us as a whole. Maybe it's gonna be more detrimental than anything else. But then also like sort of like I think I assume that we want to contribute to this treason en masse, this mass treason to rigidity, fixity, whiteness as a system, but we also, as you were saying, like embody ourselves as not only white people embody that, all of us have that whiteness, but we to like purge out of our body. Anyway, maybe it's a good transition.
Yeah, maybe. So I opened up and maybe because I haven't like I'm just gonna read it because I haven't like looked at it to read it to see if it's contextualized, but like from what I briefly looked over, I think it sort of passes on from the side of your heart. So maybe it's sort of like this chain link. So this is from the Undercommons Fugitive Planning and Black Study by Stefano Harney and Fred Moten. So I read I think I read the intro and like one or two essays when I was working on a commission a few months ago with Mal for sort of like a dance film. And it's so funny because it was sort of about well, I don't know, I don't want to like but like it was sort of about representation politics. And I was having so many conversations with Mal and like reading these essays and about like what does it actually mean? Like it's actually like doesn't really mean anything, and like this level of like rigidity and like stifling, like pulling the life out of something to then feel like you are representing something. It almost feels like you already lost, but anyways, so
but also I think
also
no, because to like clarify what, not clarify, but like add on to what you were saying from what you told me before. It's also past body representation, as body as like a surface, but rather like embodiment, like embodied experience representation, something like that. You see what I mean? Like allowing breadth for complexity rather than
exactly. We spoke a lot about like the things that can't be represented, one, and like how you enter that space like underneath a camera lens on a TV show that like millions of white people are going to be watching. It's like in that millisecond when the camera turns on, there's so much that's already been piled on you that you can't even breathe that full embodiment of who you are, because you are literally restrained to this thing, and it is restrained to the body. And just thinking about the uncontrollable things. So I was thinking a lot about crumping, how that started as a very spiritual practice, and just these things that can't necessarily be spoken. But this extract sort of isn't about that, but like it's one of the things.
I hope it's gonna be good, huh?
With this whole setup. So I think
that pressure.
I think this is the first essay called Politics Surrounded, and I think this extract is about the Black Panther Party. So I'm just going to read it and let's just see if it makes sense. So it says, their twinned commitment to revolution and self-defense emerged from the recognition that the preservation of Black social life is articulated in and with the violence of innovation. This is not a contradiction if the new thing, always calling for itself, already lives around and below the forts, the police stations, the patrolled highways, and the prison towers. The Panthers theorized revolution without politics, which is to say, revolution with neither a subject nor a principle of decision. Against the law because they were generating law, they practiced an ongoing planning to be possessed, hopelessly and optimistically and incessantly indebted, given to the unfinished contrapuntal study of Jesus Christ, and in the commonwealth, poverty, and the blackness of the surround. Yeah, that's a lot of things on the tongue. But I'm gonna just like repeat one bit. So the Panthers theorized revolution without politics, which is to say revolution with neither a subject nor a principle of decision. Against the law because they were generating law, they practiced an ongoing planning to be possessed, hopelessly and optimistically and incessantly indebted, given to the unfinished contrapuntal study of, and in, the commonwealth, poverty, and the blackness of the surround. Do you want to read it?
The one I picked is they practiced an ongoing planning to be possessed.
See, I think this one that stood out to me was just before against the law because they were generating law. But I guess that one chunk, against the law because they were generating law, they practice an ongoing planning to be possessed. Yeah, and I don't know if I can really like articulate what it means for me right now, but I think I like this idea of when you're creating something or you're building something, whether it be a world or like a new belief system or like a new way of navigating the mind and therefore like your body within this like society, you're automatically going against the grain of the thing that you're surrounded by. But yeah, like you're naturally against that law because you're literally creating something for yourself, and therefore you are like what's this quote from a movie, like a square peg going in a round hole or something like that. I don't know, so many cogs are whirring. I wasn't expected to think so much this afternoon.
Like strange, like
Anyway,
yeah, I love
Yeah, go ahead, please.
the line about the something to be possessed. Sorry, but I like this line because I think it's when you think about artists, like artists who really are going like to hell and back for the art, I would say they tend to be like this. I feel like the Black Panthers, yeah, they're not just politics, they're artists in a way, and in a way that I saw artists as a Black person, I would say, because I didn't see artists as, I mean, let me not shade anyone. I don't need to shade anyone. So
do it.
I don't mean artists in regards to, you know, just making money, right? And then for me, being an artist growing up meant someone who was changing the world and helping people with their craft. And I mean, as you grow up, you realize most of them aren't. But at least when I think about this, our conversation as it's been going, and I think of like the Black Panthers and this idea of accepting being possessed, that's what I see in the artist, that they're like willing to go into a different dimension with their reality and to be seen as the other because they know something else is more important and valuable than what we have now. And I really like the use of the word possessed for them, because I feel like, yeah, you can't be sane according to white standards to do what they did, and you can't just decide. You have to really surrender to it, I think, a process like that. And I try to imagine like what I would have been like during those days, and I prefer not to because I think I would be a bit ashamed. But I think the Black Panthers are really something that represent what it means. Also what you were saying in the book before, to like the ensemble which are feared in a way, who can't unite, but they can, but they can't, you know. Yeah, this is kind of why I was getting from this.
No, definitely. like one thing you're saying about the use of the word possession, and like not to be narcissistic and quote my own work, but I definitely am going to this very second, just because you know, that piece for Black Queer and Done, there was a line, so I wrote poetry to go with some music, to go with some movement, and I think it was like permanently existing in liminal spaces is preparing the body for possession. But when I used possession, it was like partly knowledge, like truth and knowledge that comes from something where we don't quite understand in the conscious mind, but also like this liminal space, which I suppose ties into this fugitivity of like you're constantly running somewhere that you don't know where you're going, but you know that it's like it's a space that you have to go to, and there's this constant shift and change and transformation that is happening at the same time. Yeah. You got any thoughts?
I feel like I feel like I'm a librarian today. I don't know who I am anymore. I was thinking of practicing futurities as a querying of the everyday, as Layo was speaking, and then when you were speaking, babe, I was thinking like I don't think there is anything narcissistic. So it's in your own word. We have I think when we are in conversation, we are in conversation first with ourselves, and also inviting others into the embodied and verbal folk process. And so yes, sometimes you're going to like refer back to one of your former self as you're transforming now. So yeah, I was thinking prior to all of that. Obviously, so interesting, but we like it's. I really felt like a book club kind of vibe. Like, oh, yeah, well, in my passage, we say this. It's so cute, and now I feel like I want to know more of you, Layo. I thought like, oh, let's start off with the questions. So the first one is I'm remembering it. Who was waiting for you to be born, Layo?
The devil. No, I'm joking. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I mean, I was born in a hospital, literally. I mean, I think it's funny. I know more somehow about my little sister's birth than I do my own. It's like she came out the womb and she was already staring and she wouldn't cry. But I think I was quite a quiet baby generally. But I don't know if we're speaking metaphorically or literally anyway. Well, when I was born metaphorically, it was Olodumare, the Yoruba. I don't want to say God. I think the word God sucks, but the Yoruba one, perhaps, who is non-binary, which makes me really happy. Yes.
I love that. So yeah, and the devil is also a valid answer too. I live for it. I live. Nice. Okay, so I guess leading into the second question of who is holding you tight for you to grow in any sense, shape, or formation?
I think a lot of people, like it's a lot of people. I know at times I feel like very like isolated in my career and path, but I do feel like so many people are holding me, and just kind of embracing me and witnessing me growing. I would say the community, the subconscious weirdo community, the queer community for sure. I don't think I would be alive right now without them. And yeah, of course, my ancestors. But ultimately, I'm a bit of a wayward weirdo who loves time alone. So I'd be holding my pillow.
You and the pillow in a state of interdependence, holding each other tight for you to grow. Oh, nice.
Beautiful. I think that I don't know if we were recording when you were mentioning that you're based in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Did we?
Oh no, we weren't.
Yeah. So I think it's worth maybe you saying that you're based in Switzerland.
Yeah, I'm based in Switzerland, baby. I'm here. I'm in these streets. These streets. I mean, yeah, no, I mean it's a very bizarre thing that when people ask me if I like it here, I say yes. But I say that's because I come from London. And it's rough out in those London streets. Like it's not, and it's like the anxiety lived in my body for at least a year after leaving London, and then the unhealthy lifestyle I had with not only friends, family, myself, that took 2 years to get rid of. And now I'm like finally like, okay, what's next? But it's like with London, there was a certain anger and rage that stayed inside my body, just fermenting and fermenting. And so when I came to Zurich, and they have the mountains, they have the tap water, they have like the trains show up all the time. Like it's kind of wild. Like I couldn't believe it when I went back to London. I was so angry because I couldn't believe how long I had to wait for a bus, because in Zurich it shows up. Even here, if you lose your shit, for example, I lost myself in a tram many times. And there was one time I made like 20 cookies for my colleagues to bring into work, and then some pancakes, and then I had other stuff, but like I lost that on the bus, and I called them and they said, hey, if you go back to this bus stop at this time, you can go on the same bus and maybe it'll be there. It wasn't there. I was like, damn. Then I went to the lost and found, and what I found was they ate the cookies and everything, but they gave everything else back. And so I was kind of like, hey, that's Zurich for you. And in my head, I was like, it probably went to a family who needed it, so it's fine. I just hope it wasn't like some rich white man, then I would be pissed. But if it was like a poor little a poor family who was like, oh, we found some cookies, then good, they were really good cookies. But like I would say that's a level of safety you feel here, where like, you lose stuff on a tram and it does come back and you're not worried. I had a friend who lost like 200 francs, and I think they gave them 150 franc back. It's like, what's going on? It's like so backwards. They're like, oh, it's okay, I'll just take a little bit and give you the rest of your money back, it's fine. Like, what? In London, they'll be like, yo, give me more. Like, so it's a very big starking contrast living there from here. And I think also artistically, creatively, I've been able to really expand and find myself as a person. Yeah, but it's crazy here. Yeah, there's mostly white people, and dealing with Black people here is strange. They have a different experience. I mean, we were there together, Simone. We know what time it is. Like, it was rough out in these streets, but there was a certain level of knowing ourselves and having a separation. And even if we were hurt by something, we're not going to go and try and defend the problem. Whereas here, they'll be like, oh, maybe you just need to communicate better, or oh, like maybe you just misunderstood. And I'm like, or they'll be like, oh, it was just a joke. And it's like, no, it's racism. Period. You don't need to argue. But that happens here. And they also have a very different identity, because I thought being European was enough to understand the Black identity, but actually there's the Black American identity. There's me being Nigerian, being in the UK. Then there's Europeans, Afro-Europeans, who have the whole different narrative. And this I really learned and realized out here. But yeah, being Black and happy about it and queer here is definitely very isolating. But then I don't know, still London is dark.
A place of no return for you, baby.
I mean, we'll try. I mean, I realize it's either Berlin or London if I want to expand more. If I were to stay in Europe, I would say, because I don't mind like disappearing to Senegal, I don't know, somewhere else. I would really like to, but I have a very thin skin. I'm also autistic, and with autism and being on ADHD spectrum, plus being queer, plus being non-binary, and I'm small and I'm light-skinned. There's many dangers that can come, I think, if I try to be too free, because I know they can see me from a distance, and this I think is still something I would like to ease in going back home, but I want to take my time. I don't want to like throw myself into a situation which is dangerous for me as a person. Yeah.
Thank you, Layo. I'm gonna continue. I think, yeah, you said already some elements, but maybe another, what is it? Another question that will help for you to expand on that is how do we create loving environments in the arts too? So whether you want to speak from Zurich, but also like from this imaginary imaginary place where you could be disappearing to, you know, like
yes,
describing the present.
I think it's appreciating everyday life as a gift, and to put people before the art somehow. I think it's very strange we put art before the welfare of the person doing it. And I think one step already is to radically accept that art is not value if people are harmed in the process. And also, yeah, appreciating everyday life. I think people want to have parties and stuff, and I think this is great, but like, what if we could party and enjoy dancing together without it being tainted by alcohol? And not to say we shouldn't, but I just think it's a shame that we have the alcohol first, the fun with each other later, rather than the fun with each other first, and then the alcohol might follow later. Like, I think we could be more conscious about connecting daily, and yeah, learning about different people's backgrounds and learning different things about, for me, psychology is really important, because I've been around people who are older than me who don't even understand certain basic boundaries, like, hey, you feel triggered right now, so you stop. not argue more and create an argument 1 hour before a show. So it's like things like this, you know, it's like you and it was just a moment where I was like, oh wow, like this is not stuff that is casually learned apparently. And I think with art communities, I think it could really benefit from recognizing boundaries and care for oneself, but also care for others. Is really, what's the word? You can't put a price to it. It's invaluable, and it can only make better art and better experiences. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I was thinking also as you were speaking, truth, only truth. Well, I don't know if there is a truth, but well, let's just imagine. but also like acknowledging that one of your first reply to the questions was I don't know, but also acknowledging that as beings we don't necessarily know, and as being in the arts we don't necessarily know either. And the psyche is very complex. To use one of your words that was remote, I think. We are very remote from this knowledge also, like when working with working within the arts, or like just like interacting with other human beings. And I just wish for this breadth of knowledge to be diffused more and more. I definitely like feel like I didn't know anything like 5 years ago, and like now it's starting to be like more distilled for everyone. So I hope that this knowledge is gonna be diffused more, and also that we're going to be like, I want to care for others, but I also want to be cared for, and as someone to be cared for, as someone that don't know anything about that. I want a therapist to hold my hand when I'm making work, you know,
and stroke your hair.
It's fine.
You know, I don't want like it's not about like the ego being inflated more. It's about like, you know, going to the on your like having people, beings, not only human beings, but beings supporting the healing of your soul nerves, of your of yourself, but also like its expansion. And now this inside the arts, you know, in an arty way.
Yeah, and I think like even when you're saying like, yeah, it's not like about inflating the ego, and like even like my comment earlier, it's this thing of like, sometimes it's nice to know that we are like valued, cared for. Like, there's sirens. Okay, to know that
we're actually living in New York.
Sirens all the time. But yeah, like this level of like maybe fearing that the ego is going to get too big, but actually it's like, I just want to be cared for as an individual and a human, and I want to know that I'm valued. I want to know that like you value me as like an individual person, whilst knowing that like we all have like individual like universes, but at the same time like none of us matter. But in that moment, to like nourish the work, I want to know that my universe matters in this context, you know.
Like you were saying, like as the we as artists are being nourished, then the work is gonna be nourished, and then the audiences, visitors are going to be nourished.
Yeah.
So yeah, starting with, you know, not
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's exactly it. Like as an artist and as the people creating the work, because I'm a strong believer, anything you put out is energy. So if you can nourish yourself, you can nourish the audiences. But for me, I feel like there's too many artists coming out on these streets, me included, coming like, here's my pain. It's like basically giving secondhand smoking, secondhand trauma, as far as I'm concerned. And I wonder how many artists can be responsible for a facilitator of healing, or maybe not even the word healing. We could do care, you know, but a business facilitator of care. Like, can the artists be responsible for caring for themselves, and therefore the energy and work they put out cares for others? And I think and I totally agree with you in the wanting to be held and wanting to be cared for and protected. I had a friend, Meloe, name dropping. He did a piece called Snob recently. They're a trans, autistic, disabled artist, and there's a part in their work where it's saying, who do you care for? Who do you care for? Who do you care for? Because being a trans disabled artist, they were saying how they do not get cared for, or they get exploited first and cared for after, or people care for them because they want to use them. And so it's like this wanting to be cared for, I think, is so important. I also, in my film, the text is, it's okay to be okay, it's okay to not be okay. And I think the reason I say that is because it's so important for us to know when we're not okay, to have the space to have that, and to be cared for from saying that. Usually when we say we're not okay, we're like, people are like, oh, it's your fault. And it would be so much nicer if we say we're not okay and we're held and treated as people who are not okay, as opposed to be treated the opposite. I mean, the logic is like so off with how we are treated and how we treat each other. But I think, yeah, this thing of wanting to be cared for, I think is such a natural feeling, and it's such a special feeling, maybe even because I think we have such a highly masculine trained society, which makes us feel, and I struggle with this with a lot of friends, especially male friends, where it's so hard for them to just admit I need help, or it's so hard for them to say I'm tired and to act upon that accordingly, as opposed to be like, they just can't even admit it, you know. And it's like the opposite side of the spectrum. But I think we all experience this within our own world and our own capacities. But yeah, to be cared for would be really cute. Go a long way.
Mouth grinning, like big grins.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
You were like,
yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah, it's like a on that.
I would love to add though,
God.
how that care looks is not the same for everyone. Some people don't, okay, let me not say this right. Some people want a slap. Not saying they need a slap. It's very different from that person needs a slap. Some people actually want pain, but for a different reason. Their trauma is the reason why they need pain. And it doesn't mean they should have someone who wants to give them pain. In fact, they probably need someone who doesn't want to hurt them to be the one to hurt them. I guess it's more like in this BDSM kink. But then, you know, for example, for me, I used to think I need to meditate. I need to align my chakras and all of that stuff. But then one day I realized, actually, I just need to scream and shout and maybe break a thing or two. And I need someone to accept that about me. And I think this is another thing about care, which is accepting what people need and how what someone might need in one way and one capacity is completely different from another person. And that it's okay to be different, and it's okay to also part ways with people. I've had many situations where people think their caring is showing they still want me in their lives. And I'm like, actually, it would show me you care if you just gracefully stepped away, because I've had enough and I'm tired. I think this is also, something I just wanted to add.
Definitely, I think that's so important. And even going back on the pain, like, yes, kink, but also this idea of like flogging for like spiritual penance as well, you know, like this whole idea of like, I need that pain because like then it brings this comfort or this healing that is then going to come after it, which who knows, could be a thing, could not be a thing. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I could say, and I know that we have to like wrap up, and I could definitely like talk literally all day with you, like but yeah, I think really important points on care, about energetic exchange, about what we put out into the arts, what we expect from others. And like one thing, I think it's a beautiful thing that it seems like the collective consciousness is now moving away slightly from this like trauma, I'm traumatized, look at the trauma. And now getting into more complex and nuanced discussions of like who we are as individuals, rather than just like this monolithic black trauma, TM, you know.
But I still want trauma sometimes, you know, like I still want to be plugged with like some shows, but I just like,
yeah.
Trauma. I don't want, I think for me, what's really important is the fact that it's not about seeing black experiences in one way.
Exactly.
We want some of that. Some of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's but I don't, because I also heard a lot of like, oh, it's enough black trauma by now, you know. I know that for me it's
Which
been like
is
such
fair,
a.
yeah.
I'm speaking. For me, it's been such. The arts has been such a healing space as well. Like to just like express trauma when I needed to like just vomit it. So I want this space with way more care and holding for others as well, but also like for more nuanced pieces or like other things around, not even around the black experiences, around being being a complex being.
Yeah, and this is the thing, because I think like it's okay to have art on quote unquote black trauma or just trauma for black people, but it's like we want to be able to choose. It's like if all of it's like when you go to the cinema and it's like you got 10 slave films and then one thing where the black person is like the character that dies or something, I don't know, but it's like I want to be able to choose. Like I can have 10 options and one of them is like, black fairies, like, or like one of them is like whatever. You can have that choice, but then to be like battered in the head with it all the time, it makes you, it's almost like it's like making you believe that the trauma is the only experience. Do you know what I mean? But I do agree that it's sort of like these stories are still important, and especially for artists being able to feel held in a space, if that is actually true and if they do feel that, and to just express that,
And I think there's always like this gap, unfortunately, between like the Black intellectual, perhaps, and the average person, which is, I think the Black intellectuals are reading probably more like philosophers who are like racking our brains trying to figure out a way out. And then I kind of feel like someone asked me what art means, and it's like a manifestation of our subconscious or an expression of a subconscious. And I feel like, with the trauma, it's just showing that we still have it there. But I just think, I think unfortunately there's so many white people picking which things we put out, and there's not many nuanced expressions of our experiences. And I think this is where it gets very annoying, that you have to somehow go through this white narrative of things, and sometimes actually when you look back you realize their narrative was nothing compared to what you had, and that it speaks volumes to how I feel like I've gone completely off where I was starting from.
I love that. Happens all the time.
Like, left or right.
No, I think it was a good time to like let it float anyway.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining us and communing with us in this space for a very concentrated amount of time.
An ephemeral ensemble.
An ephemeral ensemble.
Oh, yes, bit.
Let me tell you what's dark, masking my heart. When a cat acts scared of the dark. Dark energy pushes the stars apart. In the dark we become who we are. What's dark, masking my heart. From the start to the day I depart. So I fell in love with the shadows, burn to the light, but we thrive in the dark.
I just wanna lie here in your arms. I'm in love with your darkness, sweet and scarred. I just wanna kiss you where you are, cause our lips are gentle but the world is harsh. I just wanna party till we're torn apart. Give me more, baby, nothing's too far. I just wanna breathe and become the stars. Give me more, give me more, give me more. Let me tell you what's dark, masking my heart. When a cat acts scared of the dark. Dark energy pushes the stars apart. In the dark we become who we are. What's dark, masking my heart. From the start to the day I depart. So I fell in love with the shadows, burning the light, but we thrive in the dark. What's